the meeting between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. And what we've seen so far, it was all about how China can buy agricultural products from the United States. It's soybeans basically, which
Yeah,
was replaced. The United States was replaced by other countries like Brazil, for
yeah,
example, in the case of soybeans. And I think one of the most important thing was the Strait of Hormuz. Donald
yeah.
Trump wanted China to do something about it, but they didn't mention anything about the toll system, the new mechanism of the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah.
They said it must be open, demilitarization of the strait, which is basically the United States militarizing the strait.
Yeah.
And how did you find, Andrei? Because we see, I would say the way China is today is so much influenced by the two wars, one in Ukraine and one in the Middle East, and put China in a different place to meet Donald Trump in Beijing. Your understanding of what has happened?
My understanding is based also on this fact, which is it's not a rumor, but there is a very interesting, so to speak, the shuffle, or solitaire, if you wish, in a sense that China actually was pressing Iran to conclude any kind of the agreement with the United States in order to open Strait of Hormuz, because up to 25% of the energy comes through China. China is in a precarious position here because obviously for all this, what bravado, reality is China needs an energy, a lot of it. Obviously, one of them is Russia. It's gas and oil and all that. But still, what are you going to do how can you replace 1/5 essentially of your energy consumption? And all this talk about China coal, I spoke about this with Garland Nixon yesterday about it, and I mentioned it. China has a very good quality coal. The problem is, it's over in terms of easy extraction. You need to go deeper and deeper, and some of the mines are more than 1 kilometer deep or something like that. This is a horrendous depth. It's very expensive. So, and renewables, obviously, as I already stated yesterday, that anybody who comes in, oh yeah, China leads the way with the renewables. Well, did anybody see the share of the actual renewables? Hydroelectric is considered renewable, but it's obviously gigantic portion of those renewables, overwhelming majority, is hydroelectric. All the solar, wind, and what have you, it's all for the consumption of the public, which doesn't understand the basic physics. So China is in a precarious position here. And if it's true that, which I tend to believe it is, that China was pressuring Iran regarding some kind of the settlement between United States and Iran. Obviously, we know it's Israel and Gulfists too. That's not a very interesting, let's put it this way. This is a very good indication of actual position of China, in sense of, obviously they have to follow their own national interest, and it's obviously normal that they want to settle things down, but you do not go out and try to preach their, all this gospel of, peace, man, like hippie. No, that's not how it works. And that is why you begin to see now a very interesting shift in Iranian rhetoric, which is becoming increasingly pro-Russian. I believe the recent statement by Arakchi, who said that Russia is guarantor essentially for the things of Iran seldom says anything like this, So, and then you begin to see the tremendous activity on the activization of the Caspian Sea route between Russia, which existed before, obviously, but now it's evidently got the serious boost. So it's very complex dynamics. And again, make no mistake, I understand that for China, the most important question apart from energy is Taiwan. And guess what? Marco Rubio, and there is no, this is the funny thing. United States officially recognizes that China's sovereignty over Taiwan. But it is one thing to officially do something, and totally unofficially, this is what West does in special military operation, support effectively the essentially, well, irredentist movement, if you wish, of Taiwanese, and supporting all kinds of the parties which are now opposing to, of all parties, Kuomintang, which was the originator essentially of the Taiwan's sort of independence. So nothing has been resolved here, and Marco Rubio made it very clear today. He went on record, and you can listen to him today, and evidently said, okay, we know their position, they know ours, that's it. No, and that is the issue. So no matter how many perks you will try to offer in terms of the economics, which is important, of course, nobody says that it is not, but reality is there overriding national interest, national pride, national whatever, and especially the cultural unity. What is Taiwan? Chinese people, that's who they are. I mean, they're Chinese, all right? So it's a very, very peculiar situation, and it's a 3-body, if not 5-body problem, let's put it this way, and nobody can basically predict right now. I mean, generally, you can kind of sort of get the general direction, but China is facing also with some challenges, and especially considering the fact that Chinese, part of the Chinese party elite, and especially the southern elites from the southern provinces of China, they are very pro-Western and very liberal. They want to follow essentially in the wake of the United States. They admire combined West, despite the obvious indication to the contrary to what is happening. And so Xi has on his hands a very complex situation. There were obviously purges and all kinds of things which were happening, well, cleaning the house, essentially. But how much it's going to be in continuation once Xi leaves his post, he's obviously a very powerful man, no doubt about it. But it's difficult to say. It's no matter how much corruption they clean, no matter how many those people, who some of them are downright treasonous people, they take out, still they have, it's a gigantic country, and it is very non-cohesive essentially. There are all kinds of things. I'm not a sinologist, I am not specialist, I don't read Chinese, so I cannot pass the judgment here on my own. But what I heard from real sinologists, people who live there or who lived there for many years, they speak Chinese, they speak Cantonese, whatever the hell, those dialects, and they say it's very non-cohesive society, all kinds of ethnicities and things of this nature. And obviously, it's very difficult to keep this country together, as what Xi does, and CCP, the Communist Party of Chinese Communist Party, does. How long this course will continue? Obviously, there are some benefits to it for people. But again, as you know, especially in countries like this, the situation is not always what it looks like, So, but we have Mr. Putin flying to Beijing very soon, and that will be the sort of touching basis of what is happening, because Iran now occupies equally important, not equally, but I mean very important, very not far, close second place for Russia, because evidently something is happening in terms of their relations. And you have to understand, just to give you an example, what is happening. The Chinese manpads have been spotted and have been taken from Ukrainian forces. China continues to supply armed forces of Ukraine with manpads and all kinds of things of this nature. This is like, okay, so yeah, there are questions there, okay? There are issues.
He said, Donald Trump said that Xi told him that they're not going to send weapons to Iran. But after all, they don't need Chinese weapons, because Iran is just fighting its war. And
yeah, and there there was there are certain systems have been delivered from China. We know that. Whatever was delivered, and again, we don't know what was delivered. We know what Russia delivered. That is, pretty much in the obvious, because even Iranians don't hide it. You have this, evidently upgraded MiG-29s Bs, which are now upgraded to the much, almost MiG-29 SMTs. They have this new Zhuk Beetle radar. They have the capability to engage targets at a very long range. You have Mi-28s flying there. You have Su-35s. So you can see it. You know it's there. You know that the things with China, you know that they have been flying aircraft with something, but evidently whatever was negotiated between China and Iran there, they want to keep it under wraps. And the reason they call to want to keep this under wraps, because China still considers United States not just competitive, but it is, and I don't want to be misinterpreted wrongly here, but I will use this term. China still is afraid of the United States militarily. And I know actually, I'm not sinologist, but I know quite a bit about Chinese armed forces. So there are things which China needs to consider in this particular case. Despite some successes, they definitely move ahead with many things, and some achievements there, no doubt about it. But China is very much aware that, let's put it this way, it's not as strong as it tries to portray itself militarily vis-a-vis United States.
But if that's the case, they need allies, they need partners who
well, Russia is, it's obviously, and then do not forget, you know this probably, I was stunned when a few years back, very few, 3, maybe 2.5 years back, when this started to circulate, not obviously in the mainstream media, I don't even read them anymore, but it's actually on the media from different countries, which are more or less objective. And this famous investment agreement between China and Iran, and which was assessed at $400 billion, which is very significant, very large. And there was actually resistance from the Iranians. And the reason that it was resistance there, because obviously China said, we will come in with this money. And China is a rich country that has a lot of money. And said, but essentially that what was happening, that they wanted to remove actually whatever the project they were doing there, to shrink as much as possible the Iranian participation. That was all about making money and making profit for China, not so much about Iran. Of course, Iran would benefit and what have you. And I understand, and I was reading this, including in the Russian press, and serious Russian press, not some media. I'm talking about analytical materials from analytical sources I respect, and I know they're real deal, that they were saying Iranians were actually kind of like pushing back, because said, you know what, it's fine, but what about us? What is our participation? And that was like, no, we will do it on our own, and we will own it, essentially. This is what is this all about. So in this case, that is why if you listen attentively and you follow the press and news and what have you, this brie, this road, this new Silk Route, of China is kind of, it's still there, but not quite. Just to give you example, the terminus for this new Silk Road was obviously Europe, which at that time was projected to be what, solvent and high society of the first world, with the expenditure which would support this type of the excessive manufacturing capability of China. Well, guess what? Europe is becoming poor. Simple as that. I mean, this is just unbelievable. And so China easily left here with this serious problem, because Of course, they need to shift now to Eurasia, which is developing, and Eurasian continent is going to be more prosperous than Europe within some decades. But that was one of the things which was the foundational for the Chinese economic expansion. And so there you go. And these dynamics, you will not find anything about it, well, except for them trashing China. They love to trash China. I don't, but I have to state here that there are problems, there are issues. And Vladimir Putin obviously flies to Beijing, not only because obviously we know that Trump wanted China to facilitate some kind of the agreement between China and, United States and Israel, all right, and Iranians. Iranians already stated it's a no-go. And that was a snub to China, because China was considered, they wanted to insert themselves as the broker. No way. And Iranians have been very clear on that. And what can I say? It's a 525 body problem. Okay, you have to juggle this whole thing. What is going to happen? What's going to happen? And that's the situation. And obviously, the situation with Taiwan and essentially failure with Iran. Iran obviously is not going to compromise on its control of the Strait of Hormuz. And I believe it was Arakchi. No, it wasn't Arakchi. It was somebody from the one of the generals from the basically the Revolutionary Guards. He said, "We're going to make on Hormuz Strait more than we make on selling oil." There you go. And this money stay within Iran, so there you go. And here's the thing. Russians don't care about sanctions. Russians broke through. They don't care. They say, oh, yeah, you cannot do. Oh, yes, we can. China still plays with the sanctions.
Actually, China paid, Andrei. They were talking about the toll system in the Strait of Hormuz. From the Iranian sources, we've learned that they were various, multiple Chinese ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz before the meeting between Donald Trump and Xi. They paid the fee, but they call it environmental and logistical upkeeping costs.
Okay.
Something they put a name on it. It's
Iranians know Iran definitely does know the spread. Iran does know the score. Iran is in the middle. It's a pivotal country there. So, and that is why, we have to keep in mind on, have to eye on the whole spread, so to speak, this larger picture. And it's not that black and white at all. There are so many shades of gray. There are all different colors there. And again, do not forget, that's what people do not understand. What happened with North Korea? Russia said, screw your sanctions, and they just broke through. Period. They said, we don't care. Same is happening now with Iran. We don't care. You can impose sanctions. Russia has 26,000 sanctions on it now. So Russians don't care. So Iran is the neighbor. Iran is the ally. Let's do it. Don't even look at it. So Iran, what do you want in terms of weapons? Okay, there you go. Inked. So that's it. Doesn't matter what combined West says anymore. China still continues to abide by largely, not all, but many things which are related to sanctions. And that is why there was a negotiation that China said, we will continue to buy oil from there. But again, it's not negotiable. With Russia, you just cannot come and say, we don't care, go screw yourself, No, China wants to settle it, they want to. What they do not understand, the moment you begin to discuss this issue as if looking for the approval, you immediately exhibit your weakness. Just do it. Don't ask it. You are big enough, you are powerful enough to tell the United States to go pound sand, but China very much is the dependent on the West. And again, I want to stress, especially this guy, whatever this, good Lord, this idiot from the European Council on the Foreign Relations, he organized it in 2007 on George Soros money. You know what happened. China was denied Pratt and Whitney jet engines for its.
You're talking about Joseph Borrell?
No, no. The other Lazarus, whatever the name of something like that. No. The guy who actually organized the council. He's a big country and he's a globalist and whatever. And he 2 days ago he published the piece, and it was covered by all major European media. He said, we need to also ground the all commercial more than 500 aircraft, Airbus aircraft, which China flies. So you have to understand what is going on. So China doesn't have modern jet engine for commercial aircraft. That is why they went to Russia to ask for PD-14. But this is the thing which people do not want to see. They don't want to discount. But what happened? Trump stopped the delivery of the Pratt and Whitney jet engines, and guess what? The new project of which is not really Chinese, it's essentially Western aircraft, which is Comac 919. Guess what? It's totally grounded. It's not moving anywhere. They cannot remotor it with the Chinese engines, which are much inferior. And so suddenly this whole project went out of the window. So now you have these guys, and he is. You will find it. The name of him, and you can find this article in the Guardian. It was all over the place in the European press, and he wrote that we have to be, behave like Chinese Europe, and we have to ground all those 500 Airbus planes which China flies. That's catastrophe, actually, So they did it to Russia, but Russia has its own, so Russians they're fine. China cannot do that.
I think China has seen what has happened with the case of Russia and Iran. Both countries, they wanted to negotiate with the United States, but it doesn't matter how big or little is the issue. They're not going to give up on, their objectives.
Yep.
When you see Taiwan, I think Taiwan is so important for the United States right now because they, as you mentioned, they have an official sort of policy. They have unofficial. That unofficially, they want to send more than $11 billion of weapons. They're talking about sending to Taiwan. What is that? I think.
Well, this is the thing which United States thinks it is free to do, and you have to understand that's the whole thing. Obviously, United States need China, no doubt about it, and essentially, United States and China are still kind of joined at the hip to a degree, despite the fact that China reduced dramatically its holdings in terms of treasuries, and it's dropping it. Obviously, Trump went to China because he wants China to finance United States, basically to buying the treasuries, which are worthless papers nowadays, and so, but also, the agriculture, soybeans, as you correctly stated, United States was the major provider of the soybeans, and so there is a mutual interest. And what can I say? United States thinks that it can offer some kind of, privileges and trade them in for those privileges. Of course, are absolutely worthless. Russians understood it from the get-go. They told the United States to go pound sand, but China will negotiate. They will negotiate in the sense that, let's kind of find something, how can we benefit both from this? But United States doesn't care, because it is the state of mind in the United States that we are so great, we are so amazing and shining, that even though we are becoming poor, we still think that we are so, admired around the world, which is absolutely not the case anymore. But in China, as I already stated, there is a very strong, very powerful pro-Western and liberal, so to speak, the strata. And it's not just party bureaucrats or military bureaucrats or intelligence bureaucrats, what have you. It is also a very large strata of population who still, listen, China actually is so enamored with Europe that they built actually mini Paris. You probably don't know it, but there is literally a city which looks like Paris with Eiffel Tower and things of this nature. This is how it happens. So there is still this, pretty peculiar Chinese, attitude towards the combined West. And again, this partially was spurred by the fact that they saw Europe as the main consumer of the Chinese goods. And this is essentially what is happening. China is dumping, so to speak, on Europe many things. And let's put it this way, very mediocre, to put it, automobiles, but they're cheaper. So and things like they want also to get, which is happening also. Germans are moving a lot of production to China, in terms of its automobile industry and things of this nature. So it's a complex, again, it's a complex interaction. It's not like one, two things, which this is a lot of gears, so to speak, which are basically turn there. And again, as I already stated, we'll need to wait for tomorrow's communique between, I think they should come up with the final statement upon the basically completion of the visit. It's a state visit, so they have to come up and make the press air together. They have to, but Chinese will always be pretty much the same, like, general terms, platitudes to cover things. And I don't think Trump is capable of patching up anything, so including with China. But again, as I already stated, Chinese, as you correctly stated, they saw what the United States does in terms of the sanctions. And unlike with the case with Russia or Iran, China is kind of on the edge with all that.